Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared, and boy, oh boy, do I have a video for you. We are going to be talking about the third temple, and basically the next step is underway toward making the third temple a reality. It has everything to do with this that's on the screen. This is the Water Libation cup. I'm going to go into that later. Just want it up for a visual for right now. We're going to talk about how the Jews, according to the Talmud, look at the year following a Shemitah or a sabbatical year. And by the way, that's right now. We are currently the year after a sabbatical year. Essentially, spoiler alert, they're expecting the Messiah to return in the year after a sabbatical year. And some other interesting things. I found out a lot of interesting things this morning, so I'm excited to share this with you. Okay, before I do, you know that I've been talking to Israel 365. I interviewed one of their reporters, Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, and I've been in contact with them. They're the ones that set me up with Rabbi Gerfine, who I speak to every other week. And we had a follow-up meeting recently, and they asked if I would support them in 2 charities, and yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I think that you'll support them too if you have the means. So there's 2 charities. One is they're planting all these trees, not for environmental reasons per se, but to restore the land, right? They're trying to bring Israel, the land of Israel, Jerusalem, back to life. There's a video right here. I would encourage you to watch it. These girls are talking about planting olive trees, fig trees, pomegranate trees. Okay. And it's really, really neat. Okay. We've already taken care of this with Salt Lake City in the Salt Lake Valley, right? That's something that the early pioneers did. They made the desert blossom as a rose. And there's another desert that needs to blossom as a rose, and it is. But you can help that along by supporting their effort to plant these trees. So if you want to help out that effort, here you go. Looks like you have 3 options: $25, $250, or $1,000. And I don't know what this option is right here, but plant my tree. So that is really cool if you want to help that effort along. I would highly encourage that. They gave me a specific link associated with me. So up here in the URL, you see that it says Christian Homestead. So, and then the second one is Adopt Ukrainian Orphans in Israel. Okay, and you can donate to that. There's a lot of people, a lot of Jews from the Ukraine that are ending up in Israel because of the situation. So please think about them. And if you have the means, please donate. It's definitely going toward a good cause. Okay, so this video started. I thought it was just going to be a quick video. I came across this as I was looking at Israel 365. It says, esoteric sources, widening Siloam Pool will usher in Messiah. Okay, that's interesting. Why is it interesting? Well, it's because, like I've said many times on the channel, even though they have different expectations for who Messiah is, they didn't recognize and they rejected Christ as Messiah. Nevertheless, we know from the scriptures and from modern revelation that they will accept Christ when he comes the second time. And I think it would be foolish to think that the Lord isn't preparing them for that, right? Again, I was just talking to Rabbi Gerfine 2 days ago, and he was talking about the fact that since 2020, him and all of his friends, other Jews, they're just like, it's like they're on like red alert. They're just like really, really expecting it to be soon. It's like the whole world has essentially woken up. Those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. And it's not just our church. It's other Christians. It's Jews. It's everybody. Okay. So anyway, this is like the next thing. But this also has to do with the third temple. And like I said, we're going to talk about this year that we're in, which is the year after the sabbatical year. Okay, so the Siloam Pool. Let's talk about this, shall we? If you'll remember from the scriptures, and sorry, I can't zoom in. When I do, it like does something weird. So just listen, or if you can read it, then fine. Okay, so the Siloam Pool says here, the pool is also mentioned in the Gospel of John as the site where Jesus heals a blind man. Now, I have shown you guys this before. This is a virtual New Testament produced by BYU. It's a really, really cool tool and visual if you want to kind of do like a virtual tour of what Jerusalem and the temple looked like at the time of Christ. Okay, so the Siloam Pool, where is it? Well, here's the temple, right? It faces east. Here's the Mount of Olives over here. Here's the Garden of Gethsemane, just, right across from there. Okay, here's the Court of the Gentiles on the other, this like fence right here is called the Soreg, and over here is where the Gentiles could be, but they can't go past that point. So as you look south, okay, here's the entrance to the temple. You would go up these two large ramps, one for men, one for women. And you can see they come up here into the Court of the Gentiles, and then you go past the Soreg, and then you enter into one of these gates over here. There's a mikveh right here. So this is, it's basically, you can think of it as like a baptismal font, essentially. It's a place where you wash to become ritually pure in order to enter the temple. But it's also, I'm going to read you something about how when Jews, if someone converts to Judaism, they fully immerse themselves in a mikveh, a baptism. They get baptized. It's very similar. I mean, when you go to the temple, it's not like you go in the pool and you fully immerse yourself. I think sometimes you just like wash your hands. I don't know all the intricacies of it. But anyway, here's the south side of the temple. And then you see way down here, okay, at the edge of the city on the south side, this is the Pool of Siloam, or you could also call it the Shiloach Pool. Okay, and it's basically another mikveh. Here's an entrance to the city right here. You see that? And there's like a road. It goes up here. And from here, the way that it's depicted, you can't really even see the temple. Well, I guess you kind of can. You can see I can't remember what this is called, but Herod kind of like built, I don't know if it's called Herod's Palace, but this right here is part of the temple complex, essentially. But you can't see the temple itself from down here, and it's pretty steep. And this right here, these are the city walls. So this is not part of the temple. So this is where Christ would have healed the blind man, and this is what they discovered and what they plan to excavate. This is what we're talking about. This right here, and it turns out that this is necessary for the third temple. I'm about to explain that. So let's go back. Don't worry, we'll get to it all. Ancient esoteric Jewish sources may have predicted that the recently announced plans to excavate the Siloam Pool in Jerusalem have a major role to play in the final redemption. The final redemption, you guys, is what they refer to as when Messiah comes to save them, to bring in world peace and just like all that stuff. You could roughly translate that idea to the millennium. Okay, because they're also expecting 1,000 years of peace. I was talking to Rabbi Gurfein about that. He called it basically a Sabbath year. So they're like, on board with the way that we view it. The Israel Antiquities Authority announced earlier this week. When is that? Well, this was written December 30th, so just a couple weeks ago. That the ancient Pool of Siloam, first mentioned in the biblical book of Kings 2, 2 Kings, will be fully excavated and open to the public. The project will be carried out in conjunction with the City of David Foundation and the Israel Nature and Parks Authority. The plan requires excavating and enlarging the site, restoring it to its original biblical size. Okay, the Siloam, or Shiloach Pool, fed by the Gihon Spring, was first built under King Hezekiah some 2,700 years ago. And then I'm going to, I'll read that. Quote, this is from 2 Kings 20:20. The other events of Hezekiah's reign and all his exploits and how he made the pool and the conduit and brought water into the city are recorded in the annals annals of the king of Yehuda. Okay, during the Second Temple period, millions of pilgrims coming from outside of Jerusalem probably used the pool as a ritual bath or a mikveh before ascending to the Temple Mount. Through what archaeologists have dubbed as the pilgrimage road, quote unquote, the city's main street that led directly to the sanctuary. So again, let's take a look at this. So people are coming in from the south through this gate right here, pilgrimage road, quote unquote, and then they would like stop here, go to the mikveh, and then continue on their way up here. Okay, in fact, let's go to this. No, this isn't exactly where I wanted to go. No, yeah. Okay, yeah, I do. No, right here. So look, you can see the Siloam Pool right there. And here's the road that leads directly to the temple. And then here's the two ramps. And I guess if you didn't have a chance to wash yourself down here in the Siloam Pool, then you would come over here to this mikveh. I'm assuming. I don't know. All right. Really cool. Really, really cool. Okay, so the road of pilgrims right here. Okay. By that point, the pool, which was the city's main water source, had been renovated and expanded to reach its largest size, approximately 5 dunhams or 1.25 acres. Located outside the walls of the old city. That's not how BYU has it depicted, but located outside the walls of the old city, the pool was lost and rediscovered during excavation work for a sewer in the autumn of 2004. Okay, so I guess they've known that it's been there since 2004, and now almost 20 years later, now plans are in place to fully excavate it. Further excavations revealed stone steps dating to the Second Temple. The excavations also reveal that the pool was 225 feet wide and that the steps existed on at least 3 sides of the pool. A portion of this pool remains unexcavated. Okay, now let's start talking about the Jewish Messianic Expectations. In his book, Moshiach is Coming, Are You Ready? Rabbi Alon Anava discussed several esoteric sources related to the Siloam Pool. The first source, Rabbi Anava brings in Rabbi Yosef Chaim, a Sephardi Kabbalist from Baghdad, Iraq, known as the Ben Ish Chai. In his book, Ben Yehoyada, the Ben Ish Chai quotes Rabbi Isaac ben Solomon Luria, Ashkenazi, known as the Irizal, who relates that his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, oh my gosh, all these names, had a dream in which he was told that King Hezekiah had blocked the Gihon, but opening the spring would usher in the Messiah. And you guys, they take this seriously. They do. This is, and who knows, maybe he did have a dream and he kind of like had a vision of the future, because it relates to his people. Okay, Rabbi Anava went on to cite Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, known as the Tzemach Tzedek, who was the third leader of the Chabad branch of Hasidut. In his book, Sefer Halikutim, the Tzemach Tzedek wrote that Adam made teshuvah, which is repentance, while submerged up to his neck in the waters of Gihon. Now, what's interesting about this is we know, in our church, we know that the Garden of Eden is in the Kansas City area. Okay, it's in the Independence, and it's in that area, right? And they don't know that, and it's just interesting that they have this idea that Adam was baptized, right? Because isn't that what we learn in our church specifically? That Adam was baptized. He was. I should have pulled that up. LDS, Adam, baptized. I think it's is it in Moses? I'm not sure. Moses 6. Baptized. Okay, so the chapter heading here, Adam's seed keep a book of remembrance. His righteous posterity preach repentance. God reveals himself to Enoch. Enoch prepares the gospel. The plan of salvation was revealed to Adam. He received baptism and the priesthood. And then down here, let's see, verse 51. And he called upon our father Adam by his own voice, saying, I am God, I made the world and men before they were in the flesh. And he also said unto him, If thou wilt turn unto me, and hearken unto my voice, and believe, and repent of all thy transgressions, and be baptized, even in water, in the name of mine only begotten Son, who is full of grace and truth, which is Jesus Christ, the only name which shall be given under heaven, whereby salvation shall come unto the children of men. Ye shall receive the Holy Ghost, asking all things in his name, and whatsoever ye shall ask, it shall be given. It shall be given you. And our father Adam spake unto the Lord and said, Why is it that men must repent and be baptized in water? And the Lord said unto Adam, Behold, I have forgiven thee thy transgression in the Garden of Eden. Okay, and then you can go on and read that. So isn't it interesting that the Jews, I'm assuming, now he's not quoting the text here, but I'm assuming that since we're talking about, he's using the word esoteric texts, and I think that's probably going to be referring to the Zohar. I'm not sure. Let's see, in his book, Sefer Halikutim, I'm not sure, but whatever the case, whatever text is being referred to here is not held by Christianity. So this is a similar belief that we have with the Jews, although they wouldn't see it as being baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. They say here, Adam made repentance and was submerged up to his neck in the waters of Gihon. So, not fully submerged, but it's like pretty close. It's pretty close. And I'm pretty sure that Joseph Smith wasn't versed in the Zohar or the Talmud or Mishnah or wherever this came from. That's really interesting. So anyway, the Tzemach Tzedek explained that the Gihon was one of the 4 rivers that flowed out of Eden. Yeah, so Adam being baptized in the Kansas City area. I know that sounds ridiculous if you're not a member of the church, but we know that's where the Garden of Eden actually was. And yeah, getting baptized in a river there. It makes sense. He commented another name for a snake, Nakash, is Gahon, which literally means stomach. This is because a snake crawls on its belly. But the word Gihon has an additional letter, Yud, which is the first letter in God's name. The snake draws holiness from the waters of the Gihon. The snake coming from holiness, i.e. the Gihon River, represents the tikkun, or fixing of the sin of Adam and Eve that caused man to be ejected from Eden. For this reason, the gematria, or that means numerical value of Nakash, snake, is 358, equal to the gematria of Moshiach, Messiah. So all that means, if you didn't really follow that, Jews engage in this practice of assigning numbers to letters. So if it was English, A would be 1, B would be 2, C would be 3, da-da-da. So you take a word, you add up those values, and then you have the total value of the word. So he's saying that Nakash, snake, equals 358, and that's the same as Moshiach, and he's talking about the Gihon. So just don't worry about it. They associated snake and Moshiach, and in look at this. Okay. The root, this is from Rabbi Anava. The root of Mashiach comes from the snake of the Holy Realm. It is the same level of the copper snake. end quote, he wrote, referring to the totem called the Nekushtan that was used to heal the Jews in the desert. Numbers 21:8. We all know that, right? The snake that was held up, all you had to do was look at it, okay? And then he says, this was a holy entity that had the power to heal and cure people. And in Christianity, we view that as being a symbol of Christ, which is interesting because you have the serpent being a symbol of Satan, Lucifer, but on the other hand, you have it being a symbol of Christ, right? Okay, he continues. Therefore, we can conclude that Messiah is coming from the source of the Gihon. If it is widened, then if it is widened, meaning the Gihon, then this initiates the redemption, or for us, the second coming, the millennium. Rabbi Anava then noted that King Solomon was anointed by the waters of Gihon, hinting that revealing the Gihon would be necessary to anoint the Messiah, king from the Davidic dynasty. Yeah, so so you have to look at this from a Jewish point of view, and he's writing it right here. He's saying that the way that they view this is like a big step toward Messiah coming. Okay? And very, very interesting. Now, there's more though, because like I said, we're talking about the third temple as well. We're going to get to that in just a second. Okay, let's move on to this next thing. This is from Israel Today. The planned excavation of the 5 Dunham site, about 5.25 acres, is getting underway after a 14-year legal battle culminated in June, when Israel's Supreme Court found no reason to challenge the validity of the Ateret Cohanim organization's purchase of 99-year leases, renewable for an additional 99 years from the Greek Orthodox Church, the largest landowner in Jerusalem, which I guess I never would have guessed, but I'm not really surprised. Now, this organization right here, Ateret Cohanim. I don't know what Ateret means, but I know what Cohanim means. Cohanim means priests. So the Jews have basically kept track of the descendants of Aaron, which are supposed to be the priests in the temple. And they've also kept track of just the general Levites, which also work in the temple, but not as priests. They do the smaller tasks. So this organization is Ateret Priests. And I went to their website. I didn't find out like a whole lot, but like I think everything you need to know is just right here. Returning, reclaiming, and rebuilding a united Jerusalem. Okay. And I went to the about, but none of these guys have Cohen last names or anything that sounds similar. So I'm sure it's not just Kohanim. But anyway, you can check that out. One of the Ateret Cohanim's goals is to purchase land in the history-rich area for public viewing, said Doran Spielman, vice president of the City of David Foundation. Previously, the area, which was off limits to everybody, lay barren for decades and was littered with garbage, he said. Quote, "It is not every day that we find an icon in Jerusalem. This is not just a huge find, it is a mega find." Okay, so this is a big deal. This is a big deal to them. And this is also from just a few weeks ago, December 28th of 2022. Okay. And yeah, look at this. This looks like, this looks exactly, let's go down here again. It looks like this. You know, basically this area right here where my mouse is circling is this picture right here. That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Okay. Now, there's more. Okay. Israel 365. Now we're going to start talking about the third temple. Reenactment of the water libation held to prepare for the third temple. Now, before I came across this article, I did some research into the Shiloach spring. Okay, and let me share that with you really quick. Actually, first, let me share this with you. I was interested to see that the word or the name Siloam has only showed up 10 times in General Conference going back to 1942. And the majority of the time that it's been used, it was used by one of the presidents of the church. Pretty much every time when it was brought up in conference, it was going back to the story of Christ healing the blind man. And this is from Thomas S. Monson, April 1968 General Conference. Can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? And he says, and there, I think there might be a spiritual lesson here, possibly. Not just like multiple layers, obviously. But one of these might have to do with now. Right? We know that like Christ, him going around and healing people, that was good. It was obviously good. It was a sign of his power and who he was, but it was also symbolic because he came to teach, right? To show the way. And so when you heal somebody, like you heal their ears so that they can hear, their eyes so that they can see, on a symbolic level, the lesson is he's coming to show you the way. He's coming to help you hear the Spirit, learn the gospel, and truly see with spiritual eyes and not just like live in this fallen world, right? So that's like one level of the symbolism and probably the most important one. Another one, though, I'm wondering if this could also be a symbol for now, the future, where he unblinds the Jews, because when he comes, they're going to see him for who he is, right? So, so look. Okay, second, let us turn to Judea and examine the testimony of one who was born blind. Him for whom it was always night, no day, just night. But let him provide his own account, how darkness was turned to light. Astonished neighbors, noting his newly acquired vision, asked, "Is not this he that sat and begged?" Others said, "He is like him," but he said, "I am he." Therefore said they unto him, "How were thine eyes opened?" "A man that was called Jesus made clay, and anointed mine eyes, and said unto me, Go to the pool of Siloam, and wash. And I went and washed, and received sight." It's from John 9, verses 8 through 11. When the disbelievers urged, "Give God the praise," we know that this man is a sinner. He rejoined, quote, "Whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. From Nazareth came sight." Okay. So this is a special place. This is where we get this story, and that's where we get some of this symbolism of healing the blind, those that cannot see. In this case, literal, but also spiritual by his ministry. Okay. So here's another depiction of it. This is from Israel 365, and it looks virtually the same. There's like just a few aesthetic differences from the BYU model, but here's this, here's that, the road of the pilgrims, the pilgrim road or whatever. Okay. So, oh, and by the way, if you want to have this program, Virtual New Testament, I'll leave the link in the description below. You can get it for any of your devices, including including desktop, and then also tablets and smartphones. BYU Virtual Scriptures. I'll put the link below. So I wanted to use Rabbi Gerfein's website. He spent 30 years putting together this project called the People's Talmud. So if you don't want to like dive into the Talmud and like learn, the deeper things of the Jews, he made this so that you can kind of like more easily understand it. So he put this. I did a search for pool, and this is what came up. Jews. Converts, conversion, Giyur, Jews by choice, Kiddushin, 62b. The Talmud describes the basic two-step procedure for conversion to Judaism. Step 1 is the acceptance of the yoke of heaven. This means taking on the commitment to observe the Torah's commandments to the best of one's ability. This acceptance is done in front of Jewish court of 3 judges. This is done in order to give credibility to the person's declaration. The second step is immersing, baptizing. The second step is immersing in the ritual pool known as the mikveh. Placing one's body completely under the waters of the mikveh symbolizes a complete commitment to one's new life as if born anew. This way, this may be why there are 40 units of water in the mikveh, corresponding to what the sages say, that on the fetus's 40th day from conception, the child is now called alive. Concerning the immersion in the mikveh, Tosafot state that only one Jewish witness is required. So this is very interesting and very similar. I've talked to Rabbi Gerfein about, why would someone want to convert to Judaism? Because from their point of view, they don't do proselyting. That's not the purpose. They would have you remain a Gentile, not because you need to be saved by becoming Jew, but essentially they view themselves as like a holy nation, right? That they are a priestly nation, and their job is to, perform the services in the temple and essentially bless the rest of the world with temple service, teaching and stuff like that. But you as a Gentile, all that you're expected to do is keep the 7 Noahide laws or commandments. Okay. And they believe that that's what was being obeyed from the time of Noah down to the time of Moses. So that's, according to them, that's what Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they would have been obeying the Noahide laws, including Israel in Egypt, to some extent. Okay. But once God made a covenant with them at Sinai, they, as a holy nation, have many, 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 many more commandments that they have to observe, right? So if someone tries to convert to Judaism, they're told no, and they're told no a few times. But then if they're really adamant about it, they allow them to do it, because at that point they're like, okay, no, he really is supposed to be, he or she is supposed to be part of Israel. And so they go through this process. And this is the process roughly that you go through when you become a member of the church. You're interviewed, right? There needs to be witnesses to your baptism. You get fully immersed. Okay. So you can see again, a very rough parallel, but a parallel nonetheless. And it happens in a mikveh, and the Pool of Siloam it's a mikveh, right? So, this is fascinating stuff. And then I went on, I went to safaria.org. This is a great place to read these Jewish texts, the Mishnah, Talmud, Midrash, the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, and so on. You can come here. I just did a search, and I found out, look at this. Okay, this has to do with the Siloam Pool. 2 significant mitzvot, or commandments, 2 significant commandments were performed in the temple during the festival of Sukkot. Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths. A sukkah is like a tent that you stay in as long as possible during the day, during the week that they celebrate Sukkot, to commemorate when Israel was wandering in the wilderness. They only had temporary dwellings, so you kind of reenact that. The commandment of the water libation and the commandment to encircle the altar with willow branches. Okay, so water libation as part of the Feast of Tabernacles, and then you have willow branches that go around the altar. Neither is written in the Torah, right? The first 5 books of Moses. They are traditions transmitted to Moses from Sinai. And that's what the Talmud is, you guys. The Talmud, well, that's not what the Talmud is. That's what the Mishnah is. The Mishnah it was meant to remain oral. So basically, you're reading the Bible. It tells you, okay, you need to observe the Feast of Tabernacles. Well, the Bible doesn't tell you how to do that. So the Jews believe that portion of it was oral. There were oral teachings. And after the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, they realized that they were going to be out of the land of Israel for a long time. And so they decided it would be best to write down those teachings. It became the Mishnah, and then the Talmud is commentaries on the Mishnah. That's what we're reading right now. The commandment of the water libation was detailed extensively in this chapter. How they drew water from the Siloam Pool and how they took it up to be poured on the altar in a procession accompanied by trumpet blasts. So you see this? You see this? The Siloam Pool in Judaism is necessary to perform temple rituals, specifically in this case for the Feast of Tabernacles. And that's where this comes into play. The water libation cup, and then you have the water libation vessel, and then you have the wine, you have the wine libation vessel and the wine libation cup. So here's the altar. You can see this little picture down here. Let me just read this. The water libation is performed on each of the intermediary days of Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, along with the wine libation. The water libation cup is set down on the southwest corner of the altar next to the wine libation cup. Both the wine and the water are poured at the same time into their respective cups. The openings on the two cups are of different diameters to allow the two liquids to flow through at the same speed and trickle down the side of the altar. Okay, so you get that? So what you do, if you're a priest, you go down to the Pool of Siloam, you fill up the water libation vessel, you come back up to the temple, and then you pour the water into here, the water libation cup, and then someone pours from here wine from the wine libation vessel into the wine libation cup. And you can see on both of these cups, there's like a little kind of like a spout right here. You see that? And then there's one over here on the wine one too. So it drains out down here and then it pours down the side of the altar. So you can't perform this. You can't do this unless you have a Pool of Siloam. And because the Jews, they go according to what's in the Bible, and I don't think that they expect anything to change, right? So it would be necessary to have that Pool of Siloam. So now you can see why excavating this and restoring it. Right now, they're not talking about necessarily restoring it, but I think that's what they want to do. Right now, they just want to fully excavate it, get all the dirt off, get it exposed, get it open to the public. But you can see that the next step would be to actually fill it up, right? And then once you have that done, then you can properly perform this ritual on the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay? So it's really significant. There's a few other things. I guess I don't really need to read them. Let's see. Fit for temple maintenance, but not for sacrifice on the altar. How so? In a case where one consecrated a cistern full of water, the water is not fit for sacrifice on the altar, only water from the Siloam Pool is used for the altar. You see that? So you can't just like go find water from somewhere else. It has to come from the Siloam Pool. Okay, this is in the Mishnah right here. This is in the Mishnah. So it's kind of important if you want to have a third temple and you want things to function properly, and you don't have anybody like a prophet or somebody to tell you, no, it's okay, you don't need to use the Siloam Pool, we'll just use this. This is essential. You have to use the Siloam Pool, you see. So, and by the way, these images here, this is from the Temple Institute. They've created all the vessels for the temple, everything. It's all ready to go. They even have a portable altar that can be set up at a moment's notice if like something happened and they are allowed to start doing sacrifices and stuff up on the temple mount. Okay, so let's go back to this article. Reenactment of the water libation held to prepare for the third temple. They've been doing a lot of reenactments They've done some actual sacrifices, although they wouldn't like be actual sacrifices, but they still did it as like a reenactment. This was also just a few months ago. This is October 12th of 2022. So here they are. They have kind of like an altar looking thing here. I don't think this is not like the actual altar that they would use to take up to the Temple Mount. And here you see the Cohen. He's holding up the libation vessel. Okay, here's a pool. I don't know what pool this is, but they're obviously not at the Siloam Pool. Okay, now let's read this red part. Okay, check this out. Oh, yeah, I can't zoom in. I just can't do it. Technologically, it's impossible. The Shiloach Pool, Siloam in English, Silwan in Arabic, has a huge biblical import that will reemerge when the third temple is built. The Pool of Siloam was the starting point for pilgrims who made the annual pilgrimage to Jerusalem for the biblical feasts. They would use the pool to wash and ritually purify themselves before ascending by foot to the inner court of the Temple Mount to bring their sacrificial offerings. Located outside the walls of the old city of Jerusalem to the southeast, the pool is fed by the waters of the Gihon Spring, which are carried there by the Siloam Tunnel, also known as Hezekiah's Tunnel, sometimes referred to in the Bible as the Lower Pool. The pool was built during the reign of Hezekiah, 715 to 687 BCE, to replace an older Canaanite tunnel known biblically as the Upper Pool that was vulnerable to attackers. The new pool and tunnel left besieging armies without access to the spring's waters. Archaeologists believe that during the Second Temple era, the waters continued to flow south and were collected in additional larger pool. This pool was discovered during the summer of 2004 and is continuing to be uncovered today. It should be noted that the year after Shemitah, or a sabbatical year, is auspicious for the arrival of Messiah. The Babylonian Talmud in the Tractate of Sanhedrin 97a brings the verse from Amos. Quote, "On that day will I raise up the fallen booth," or the Sukkah of David. Remember, the Sukkah, that's the singular for like a tent, and then Sukkot is the plural, so booths or tents, right? That's from Amos 9:11. This verse comes in the context of a prophecy about God bringing the nation of Israel back from exile among the nations. Amidst descriptions of the days preceding the Messiah, the Talmud says, quote, "As it is written, in that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen." Our rabbis taught in the 7th year cycle of the end which the son of David will come in the first year, this verse will be fulfilled. Okay, so the 7-year cycle, it's the 7 years. They treat years like weeks. So we just went through the Sabbath of years. That was the last Hebrew year. And we'll look at the Hebrew calendar in just a second. Let me just finish off this article. On Rosh Hashanah, 2 weeks ago, the Shemitah, or sabbatical year, ended. The Talmud is stating explicitly that the Messiah will come in the first year after the Shemitah. It should be noted that the Talmud describes the days before Messiah in depth, and they are especially difficult times. Okay, now we've talked about this before because I was thinking, okay, well, the Jews, if they were to assign days of the week to these years, then the Shemitah, or the sabbatical year, would be Saturday, because that's when they observe the Sabbath. It's on Saturday. Christ was resurrected on Sunday, and because of that, Christianity observes the Sabbath on Sunday to commemorate his resurrection and the atonement. So I was like, well, it would make sense that the second coming might happen in the year after a Shemitah, because if he really wanted to drive that point home, that's when he would come. He'd be like, this is to like underscore, to highlight his resurrection. Now, we've noted, excuse me, that let's look at the Jewish feast days. It's this one right here. Let me zoom out. So the Jewish feast days, there's 7 of them. Okay, these are called the appointed times, or when you're looking in the Mishnah, it's called the Moedim. Okay, the appointed times. These are the times when these different feasts and festivals were supposed to be observed. You have 4 that are in the spring. You have 3 that are in the fall. So the ones that are in the spring were fulfilled, so to speak, because we know that these feasts, they weren't just to just arbitrary. They were meant to point forward to Christ. So obviously, Feast of the Passover, also known as Pesach, which is also the name for all 3 of these first ones, are all within like the same week. The Feast of Passover, or the Passover Seder. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is the entire week. You don't eat anything that has leaven in it. And then the Feast of First Fruits is the second day, or Nisan 16. That's when the very, very first fruits, the first harvest of the year, the very first ones are brought to the temple. And that's why Christ was resurrected on that day, because it was supposed to point their minds to how it's like all of us, we are the fruit of a harvest. We are wheat. We're whatever crop you want to choose. The Lord is basically harvesting us, right? Those that are righteous. And so Christ was the first one. So he was resurrected on the Feast of First Fruits, also known as Bikurim. So Christ obviously fulfilled Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because he rose, and then the Feast of First Fruits, right? And then the Feast of Weeks, also known as Shavuot, also known as Pentecost, also known as the Feast of the Harvest. This is when the Holy Ghost came in the New Testament, when they were when the apostles were observing Pentecost. That's when the Holy Ghost came down and came to the church. Okay, so these spring feasts have already been fulfilled, so to speak. It doesn't mean that other future things can't happen on these days. The fall feasts, as far as we know, they haven't been quote unquote fulfilled, except for maybe Rosh Hashanah, also known as the Feast of Trumpets. This is also the Jewish New Year. This is when the date changes. They have 4 New Years, but this is the one that we would think of as a new year, where you go from one year to another. And on this day is when Joseph Smith received the gold plates and initiated the fall harvest. Okay, if you think about when Christ came the first time, that being the spring, and then summer, nothing was really going on, the great apostasy, and now we're in the last days, it's the fall harvest. Well, Joseph Smith received the gold plates, the main tool of the harvest, on the Feast of Trumpets, also known as Rosh Hashanah. Now, the one thing that's interesting is that Elijah, the Jews expect Elijah to come on the first day of Pesach, during the Passover Seder. That's when you have at night, on the first day at sundown, you have the Passover Seder, which is the meal with unleavened bread and bitter herbs and stuff. And they have an empty seat for Elijah, because it's prophesied that Elijah will return. Well, he did return. He came to the Salt Lake, or to the Kirtland Temple. But the day that he came was not on the first day of Passover. He came on first fruits. And there's an article in the Ensign about this. That's how I found out about it. We've already covered it on the channel. But he decided to come, or he was appointed to come, on first fruits, on Easter. Okay? So that's why it makes sense to me that Christ, if he's following this pattern, he might come in the Sunday of years, the first day of the week of years. So when we look at, where is it? Right here. I did a little thing where I tracked all the Shemitahs. Okay. It's every 7 years. And this particular Shemitah ended on at sundown on the 25th of September 2022. So we are now on the Sunday of years. Okay. So I was tracking this just because, let's keep track of it, because this could be an indication of when he would come, or when he would choose to come for the second coming. Now you'll notice this dark green highlighting here. What this means is both first fruits on the Hebrew calendar and Easter on the Christian calendar are on the same day. So in 2024, they are not on the same day. First fruits falls on the 28th. Easter falls on the 31st. And you can see that first fruits and Easter, they usually fall on the same day. It's kind of like hit and miss, but generally they probably fall together more than they don't. Okay. And they're celebrating the same thing. First fruits, we just talked about Bikurim. It's the first harvest. Easter, we're celebrating Christ. So it's the Christian version of Bikurim in first fruits, but they don't always fall on the same day. Okay, so in 2022, it was a year where they both fell on the same day. Additionally, Passover started on Friday last year. It started on Friday at sundown, and that's when it started the last year of Christ's life. Okay, the last year of his life, the last week. It was a Friday. According to church sources, I know there's dispute about this. There's always dispute about everything. I'm going with church sources, and the overwhelming majority of things that are put in church publications is that it was Friday. Okay, so you can see here this year, 2023, Passover does not start on Friday night. Okay, but last year it did. It did. On top of that, so that's why that's green. But you can see how 2018 and 2019 are green, but those were not sabbatical years. So everything was green except for the fact that they were not sabbatical years. So last year, everything lined up. First fruits and Easter was on the same day. Passover started on the same day that it did during the last year of Christ's life. And it's a Shemitah. Okay? So the thing about this, how often does that happen? Well, you can go back here to 2015. That was the last time it happened. But then before 2015, you have to go all the way back to 1938. So that's a pretty big gap. And then you go back and you see it a couple times and there's a gap. And I haven't gone all the way back through all of time, but we just experienced a really long gap, and then finally had the first one in a long time in 2015, and then just last year. And then the next one will be in 2029, and then in 2036, and that's all I know. Okay, so with all that said, I think it's very possible that this year could be the year, this Hebrew year, which would go from September 2022 to September 2023. Let's check it out. Let's go to 2023. Go down. Here's Rosh Hashanah. Yep. The night of September 15th of this year, 2023. Okay. Now, you have to take this along with everything that we've been tracking. Okay. Because we had a very special event happen on Christmas. Two very special celestial events. One is that we had the 3 giant asteroids that passed the Earth, and then we had a planetary octet, or an octet, meaning 8, octet planetary alignment on Christmas, and it showed up at dusk, and that was the exact same time this year that the 8th candle for the menorah for Hanukkah was being lit. And that doesn't always happen on Christmas because, again, they're on a lunar calendar. So it just so happened that this year that lined up. As we were celebrating Christmas, they were lighting the last candle, and it was the 8th candle, and we had an 8-planet alignment at that very same time. I don't think that's coincidence. I don't. And at the same time, we have all these people, these rulers, kings, prime ministers, presidents, popes, the longest that have ever lived, the longest that have ever reigned, so on and so forth, of all these important, large countries: China, Soviet Union, the UK, the Vatican, so on. They're all dying at the same time. Okay. And this is not a common occurrence, because when's the next time that we're going to have a death of the longest reigning British monarch? Well, Queen Elizabeth lived until she was 90. Where is it? She died September 8th. Yeah, 96. There might not be anybody that outdoes her. We don't have another Soviet Union. I don't think the Soviet Union is going to come back. So Mikhail Gorbachev dying at 91, just a week or two before of the Soviet Union. I don't think we're going to see that again. China with this guy Jiang Zemin, he lived to be 96 years old. Are we going to have another Chinese president that lives that old or longer? I don't know. The last Hawaiian princess, she's the last. Greece, the last Greek king, there are no more because they abolished their monarchy. So anyway, I don't want to go over all that again, but you can see things are happening in the world. We've looked at all the quotes from this year, Board the Ark by Sister Nelson, President Nelson calling us to be the people of the second coming, this last conference, talking about wearing the garment in order to attend the marriage feast, on and on and on and on. Things are getting intense. And now I'm learning that the Jews, which I didn't know until just today, that they view the first day after a sabbatical year as a year when Messiah would come. So wouldn't it be perfect? I think it would be perfect, because the way that it plays out in Zechariah is they get what they're expecting. They're expecting a Messiah to come and save them in a temporal sense. And that's what they would do. So their minds are all geared up for Messiah, especially this year. Their minds are all geared for Messiah to come. They're ready. They're expecting it. Oh, here's the Pool of Siloam. Siloam that's being excavated. It's another step toward the temple being reestablished. And then Christ comes, and they're they're in that frame of mind, and they'll recognize him this time. And then things after that are going to be beautiful. So yeah, very, very interesting things. Very, very interesting things. But in this case, we're talking about this specifically. This right here, the water and wine libation, which cannot take place without water from the Pool of Siloam. Okay? So, I think... Okay, let me just make sure, because sometimes I forget. Let's see, we were looking at Jubilees also. I don't know if that applies to what we're talking about right now. I've already done videos about different... No one really knows when the Jubilees are. I've done it from the... Oh my gosh. How about we change that to an E guy? Okay. Destruction of the first temple. So roughly 2015 would have been a Jubilee. Jubilees happen every 50 years. If we go off of King Benjamin, because some commentators have said that it seemed like maybe he was doing a Jubilee when he gave his address to the people. So I calculated that, and just roughly, very roughly, 2027 would be a Jubilee. The church has actually referred to Jubilees since the time of the first vision. and they've talked about it in General Conference. So on our Christian calendar and this last dispensation, it seems like the church is actually basically celebrating Jubilees. And the last time that we did it was in 2020, even though they didn't bring it up that time. Just look up Jubilee on my channel and go watch that video. But we talked about different statements, how they've talked about Jubilees. And then there's the Jubilee from the founding of the church. So that would be coming up in 2030. So all sorts of possibilities, but fascinating times that we're living in. Fascinating things that have never happened before. Israel's coming to life. It's insane. It's positively insane. And just one more time, remember, you can help literally bring Israel back to life by donating to help them plant trees and making that desert over there blossom as a rose. Or with helping the orphans from Ukraine, and hopefully that war ends. Unfortunately, I don't know how it ends. I don't. Okay. All right. Well, that's going to be it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.